folks, it is the Nutty Knife Guy. Got something pretty cool for you today. Something I've had my eye on for a long time and just couldn't quite get myself to pull the trigger because the company it's from has a mixed reputation. It's all over the internet, it's all over Amazon, and people seem to either love this brand or hate this brand, and it's not a whole lot in between. And it is a Poshland Sub-Hilt fighter. If I remember right, the model number is HK121 or REG HK121. If I remember right, I will check that out and let you know on the wrap up. Have not taken this out to the war post yet. I will take you out there with me. But I gotta tell you, I am favorably impressed. Poshland itself is selling it on its own website for $74 US. I got it off of Amazon for $39 before tax. And I've got to tell you, so far, this is a lovely knife. I'll give you a good look at it here. As near as I can tell, the guards are either actual brass or coated aluminum because they do not appear to be magnetic. The magnet I was using to try was strong, and I'm not sure they're not magnetic. The magnet I had was so strong that I think even when I was putting on the end of the quillons here to see if they stuck, I was actually getting some pull from the blade. But that's neither here nor there. They still look good. But they may be genuine brass. Now, as you can see, this has a nice pattern on it. And they claim on the website that it is a Damascus blade comprised of layers, I believe 125 layers of 1095 steel and 15N20 steel. For the price, even the manufacturer's retail price, the $74 one, I'm kind of dubious about it being real Damascus or even pattern welded steel. Now, I'm not an expert on this, but as I understand it, that Damascus and pattern welded steel are not necessarily the same. They're basically the same process, but Damascus is a little different. It's supposed to be a little better. And from what I understand, historically speaking, we're not even sure how Damascus steel was made back, hundreds of years ago. So I don't really have any way of definitively proving whether it's Damascus or not without damaging the knife. But I'll say this: the first thing I tried to do was just see if this pattern was painted on, and it wasn't. I used Windex and I just pressed like crazy. I used gun scrubber and got a really coarse cloth and tried to wipe this off, and it's survived. The pattern is a little bit hard to see, but it does. I don't know if you guys can see it at all, but it does continue on the spine and where it's ground here. And while I cannot say for sure it is Damascus or pattern welded, it appears to be. We'll see how it holds up with the strength testing. Now, having said that, like I said, I'm not sure. Pattern welded and Damascus are pretty much interchangeable terms most of the time these days, but as I said, if there is a difference, there's supposed to be a difference, but I don't really know what that might be. Okay, construction. This thing seems solid. Fit and finish are very good. There are no gaps, no glue in between the gaps. The Sub-Hilt, yeah, it's another Sub-Hilt. I love my Sub-Hilts. Are flush. You really can't feel them when you drag yourself across, except for the difference between the texture of the grips and the Sub-Hilt and the guard. Rosewood handle. One thing that kind of surprised me is the pommel is peened, and which means the whole handle is peened on, not bolted. A lot of the treatment knives, this is, I believe, made in Pakistan. Poshland is a British company, but I think they have all the manufacturing done in Pakistan, I think. But with a lot of these Pakistani or budget blades, especially the Damascus ones, you've got kind of a rat tail tang through here with thread that's threaded at the bottom, and you've got a bolt on. This is pink, and that's a good thing. It's very solid. Uh, and you know, it's beautiful. It's got a nice recurving blade. I like the recurved blades. Uh, just the right amount of file work. I'm not a big one for a whole lot of file work on a spine, but this one is just enough to make the knife a bit more attractive, and it's not overdone. It's very subtle, and I like that. Now, this is the only pattern welded slash Damascus ish, Damascus ish. There's a word for you, that I have in my collection. I'm not a Damascus fanboy. It does look good in some things, but I don't think it's the beat all end all like a lot of people. But this is one of those knives, and I hope I go out to the war post and use this thing and chop some bottles and slam it against some wood. I'm really hoping I don't damage it because it is so pretty. When I first got this out of the box, the balance felt weird. Not good, not bad. It didn't balance like any knife I've had. I've got something close to 50 fixed blade knives and something close to 50 more, 50 folders. So I've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 knives in my collection. This one, and of course I've held and handled a lot of knives being a knife guy. This one felt a little strange when I just got it out of the box and I was sitting down and holding it. But that night I used it for my practice in fighting imaginary bad guys. And I didn't really start appreciating how this knife was balanced and how it felt in the hand until I got up and started moving with it, doing the footwork, doing the fighting drills. Then this thing, it felt amazing. When it comes to just when it's moving, this right now is my favorite knife in my whole collection. I really hope it holds up to the war post. And since I'm testing whether that's really, not only am I testing whether it's really Damascus or pattern welded, I'm also testing whether it's 1095 and what's this other kind of steel, 15 and 20. So there's a couple of things I'm going to do with it I don't do with the other knives, because I paid $40 for this knife, and if it's supposed to be pattern welded and also high carbon and two kinds of high carbon steel, I'm a little bit dubious of that. This is a very well constructed knife, and as I said, it is incredible in the hand. But even for $70, that kind of really good steel and pattern welded, supposedly handcrafted too, or handmade, I'm really dubious about that, because I mean, this is something that they offer this as a model. This is not a one-off. So there's got to be mass production involved. So I'm thinking maybe they're interpreting handmade as there were a few human hands that handled it as it went from one phase of construction to another. That's my theory anyway. But folks, if I break this one, I will definitely buy another one. I might even buy another one anyway. I like the feel of it that much. It is just so fun to play with. I might have this kind of like my TV watching chair knife, just to play around when I'm watching TV or something. I know I'm not the only one that does that. I know I've said this before. Knife guys, you know you play with your knives when you're watching TV and such. But I am hoping that I don't damage this at all. But I'm going to risk it because I am very, very curious about how this will hold up. Poshland's is all over Amazon. It's all over the internet. And as I said, when you look at the reviews, people seem to love them or hate them, and there's very little middle ground. And I've been thinking about buying a Poshland knife for a couple of years. And then finally I saw this one marked that it was just a lot cheaper than they usually are. So I think, like I said, it's $39, so figure about $45 after tax and all of that. So I am quite curious. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I already did a little bit of damage right here. See if I can angle it so you can see the scratches. And I don't know if you can. Yeah, right here. That was my attempt to rub off any ink or whatever to fake that Damascus. And as you can see, the pattern held up. It didn't just rub off. Years ago, I did buy something that was supposed to be pattern welded or Damascus, and it had this nice, pretty design. And this was before I really knew anything about that. This was years ago. I was just a kid. And I used the knife, and the knife was usable. I mean, I kept it after this incident I'm going to tell you about, and it was okay. But I got it wet. I actually was out on a hike and did some things with it. When I came home, I took it home, put it in the sink, it just ran some water over it and was wiping it off. And my Damascus pattern just smeared right off the cloth. It probably was like a 440 stainless or something like that. I used that knife before. But this appears to be at the very least pattern welded. Now, talking about the steel, if it is real 1095, and I can never remember the steel name, 15N20, high carbon steels, it should take abuse. But my thing about all of these Damascus knives that you see online for dirt cheap is they may very well be pattern welded steel, and it's not, you know, Damascus as in the way the ancient smiths in days of yore made Damascus. They really don't know how they made Damascus back then, from what I understand. But you can take crappy 440A steel, and that 440A is not necessarily a crappy knife steel. But let's just say you get a crappy batch of it. Not all 440 series steels are the same. Not all 420 steels are the same. Depends on the heat treat, depends on the tempering, just on how the steel is produced. But let's say you have a bunch of 420A crappy steel. If you heat it up and fold it over and over again and make a bunch of layers out of it, what you still have is a couple hundred layers of crappy 420A steel. You know, that's like dog poop. You know, layers of dog poop smushed together is still a bunch of dog poop. So you can have pattern welded steel and still have layers and layers of crappy steel. But if it's good steel, then you still have layers and layers of good steel. So we're going to try this out and see what happens. I'm going to do a few things extra, I think, just to try to verify what kind of steel this is. But man, I really, really hope it does well, because this thing is awesome. Two more things I'm going to mention when it comes to the feel of the knife is I'm not a big fan, I've said this before too, of grooves on a knife handle. I don't like being told how I have to hold a knife. In this case though, they're not too deep. They're fairly subtle. And it just so happens that my fingers fall perfectly into these grooves. And it's not a problem. And also, the guard is angled on top, which, if you want to hold this thing in a saber grip, my phone's ringing, sorry about that. If you want to hold it like this in the saber grip, you can. It's just perfect for that. I'm finding that the handshake grip is better, but this will work. I guess they're going to answer the phone. So I'm going to take it out the war post and take you with me, and we'll see how she does. Okay, folks, it's pretty windy out here, and I think I have my camera where it's not going to get blown over. I hope so, anyway. So I'm going to get to the war post and do some things here. Destroy some enemy water bottles, and this thing is getting whacked around by the wind, so I'm going to put it back into my little alcove here. And make sure you're still in frame for everything. Get out of the rain. Okay, looks like you'll be able to see everything. I'll get to it. Oh, and I will tell you about the sheath when I get back downstairs. Good sheath. You're going to be a problem child. Okay, I'll do the stab and rip first. And that didn't exactly go as planned, but it went through it like butter. That's a bad day for somebody. And I cut through the paracord, which is what I thought I was going to do. But it went through the bottle and went through the paracord cleanly. If it was a little longer, I probably would have cut the bottle in half. Not more water left in this one. Let's see if we can get a good cut in. And there's a little bit too much give there. I'll try that one more time. Needed the water for resistance, but it went through that and then through the paracord, so we know it was sharp. Now let's see about the war post. Sharp thrust. That's right. This is not a particular, I mean, this is wood, obviously, but it doesn't bite as well as some of the knives I've tested. Okay. Now some good solid wax. You can see the, hopefully you can see the chips flying on that. Okay. So far, no edge damage, no tip damage. I'm going to go stab some stuff and pry with it and see if this is really high carbon steel. I think I'm going to have to move you a little bit, see, because I can't see where it's pointed, but it should be in frame. I am capping my knife, and it has a solid guard. Safety first. Okay, look how far it is into this pole. And I just took a chunk out of the pole, almost. And the tip is straight and true. Okay. Now we're just going to beat on the blade a little bit. What do you say? I'm going to draw it through this. I'm not going to do this with every knife. I want to prove this steel. It's still not saying, it's still not going to tell me whether it's actually what the company says it is, what Poshland says it is. But it will give me a little bit more confidence as its durability if it holds up and it still has an edge. And it seems to still have an edge. It is passing the thumbnail test. I don't know if you can see that little bit of my thumbnail on there. I don't know about the arm. I've had a few new knives lately and I'm regenerating my arm here for the testing. Now I'm not seeing anything, but that really doesn't mean anything. I don't have a whole lot of hair on my arms right now. Okay, location switch again. See if I can get out of the glare so I don't have to fidget around so much. Okay. Now, after all of that, is she still sharp? And you got to kind of find the angle in the right spot on this blade, but yeah, this is a really dry sapling and it's doing okay. I did not sharpen this when I got it out of the box. It came pretty sharp, but I just got to find the right angle. Go a little further down here. Yeah, I mean, it's doing okay. This is not a knife that's really designed for that. Let's try here. It's got that recurve on it, which is great for slicing, but it does seem to want to slide off. There we go. We'll go ahead and make a mini vampire deterrent for baby vampires. Like I said, the blade geometry isn't good for this because it does still have a nice edge on it, but I've just got to find the right angle. This edge has a pretty severe, the edge itself has a pretty severe angle to it. And this is a fighting knife. They call it an outdoor knife because it's obviously not a hunting knife, and they don't want to call it a fighting knife for fear of snowflakes and the outrage. Yeah, but cut you guys, huh? This end of this keeps breaking off. Not the best wood in the world, but it's what I got. But you can do these kind of things with it. And I got to go clean up my mess. And I will see you downstairs for final thoughts. It's just, I think its recurve is what's not making it so much of a carver. And also that's a kind of a poor specimen of a twig. But that's good to know that this knife won't do that very well. But as I said, it's not what it's designed for. Guess I should have turned you folks off. Okay. We put the old girl through her paces. And I will give you final thoughts, but first I want to tell you about the sheath before I forget. Very nice sheath. It is real leather. The leather is reasonably thick. It's slab-sided. Has good thick stitching, double stitched all the way around. Little decorative work here. The belt loop has two very substantial rivets. Looks like it would hold together. Snap is positive. Fits the knife quite well. Not a whole lot of rattle. Once again, though the snap for the retention the retention strap goes blade side. I beg you, all knife companies, stop doing that. But other than that, this is a nice quality leather sheath. Okay, having taken it out the warp post, you saw that it's got cutting ability, no problem. Zipped right through that water bottle and still cut the paracord in a single stroke. Now, the funny thing about it was, it didn't really want to bite when I was thrusting it into the wood, but it went through that thick detergent bottle much easier than I anticipated, and I'm not sure why that is. But the slash and rip you saw, that would ruin the day of a lizard man zombie ninja for sure. It does still have a decent edge after all of that. Now, when I was trying to whittle with it a little bit, I think if I stayed out there longer and I really worked with the knife and got just the right angle and just the right bite, and it wasn't an old twig that was green when it was taken out, and it wasn't all dried up, I would probably do it better. That was probably more my failure than the knife's failure. And also, as I said, that we've got a pretty stiff wind out there, and it's only about 40 degrees, and my arthritic hands were protesting being used out there. So, having said that, I have very little to criticize about this knife, as pretty much nothing. I'll hold it up again so you can see that none of the patterning is damaged by what I did here. I got some light on it there. Pried, thrusted, and no bending in a point. Everything's still solid and straight. Drag it through that fence post, and it did lose a bit of its sharpness there, but I'm thinking that that would dull just about any knife. I mean, I was going chopping pretty inch deep and drawing through, and it's still very sharp. I'll try the arm thing one more time, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't have a whole lot of hair on my arm right now. Anyway, no, I'm not getting anything there, but I think it still passes the thumbnail test. Let me get enough on there so maybe you can see it. You can, I think you can see maybe. If I get the light just right. Here's the camera on this thing. Here it is. If I get the light just right, you might be able to see the shavings from the thumbnail test. And for those of you who don't know, you just kind of lightly lay a blade on your thumbnail and see if you can shave a little bit of thumbnail, maybe get a little powder on there without pressing down. Just let the weight of the blade basically rest on your thumbnail. It's usually sharp enough for most tasks if it can do that. But I'm liking this thing. It is not something that I am going to go out in the field and use. They call it an outdoor knife, but again, with the way it handles, with the Sub-Hilt, you've got a nice fighting guard here. I'm thinking this is a fighting knife, but they don't want to call it that. So, and like I said, with me, it's about edged weapons. I have knives out there that aren't meant to be weapons, but they at least have meant specifically be weapons. But almost everything I have has has fighting at least partially in mind in their design, and that's what I think this is. because the guard is so wide, you really can't get up on the blade like this very comfortably to do fine work. You can put your thumb around the guard, but that's not very comfortable. It doesn't really have a choil for the thing. This isn't designed for camp use. I mean, it took a pretty decent pounding out there. I was wailing on that wood pretty good, and I wailed on the fence post. And it is still absolutely tight. It's still sharp. No point damage. Okay, I don't know about the rest of Poshland knives, but this Poshland knife is a very good knife. Other people have had other experiences if you read the reviews of their knives online, but this one is good. I mean, peened, a nice Sub-Hilt. I don't know if it's brass or aluminum. It might be steel that's coated. I'm going to get a weaker magnet and try it to see, make sure that I'm not getting any magnetism coming from the blade. But this is a winner. I am very pleased. This has come to be already come to be one of my favorite get it out and play with knife, because it moves so fantastically. It is very, very nimble. It just feels, once you get it moving, it feels great. And there it is, folks. I don't have anything bad to say about this knife at all. Poshland, 40 bucks. Now, the steel held up pretty well. Am I certain that this is 1095 and 15N20? I'm going to remember that 15N20. Am I certain that this is pattern welded or Damascus steel made out of 1095 or 15N20? There's no way I can be sure. I'm not a metallurgist. I'm not going to break the blade just to see if the pattern's in there. But though I can't prove that it is, what I did out there doesn't prove that it's not. Didn't prove that it's not. And as I said, I tried Windex to get to see if this was just ink. I even scratched it a little bit. Tried to see if the pattern is real. And at least the pattern's not coming off. The pattern is integrated into the metal. And if you run your fingers lightly across it, you can even feel the pattern a little bit. So, real Damascus, real pattern welded. I'm inclined to say yes, but I can't prove it. But the thing of it is, it really doesn't matter as long as the knife is a well-made knife. And this is a well-made knife. Like I said, I can't say anything about it. I have some doubts about the manufacturer's claims, but doubting isn't proof. I mean, it's up to other people to prove that it's not what it says it is. So, for this particular Poshland knife, big thumbs up. I will probably buy another Poshland knife, a different model in the future, and prove it out. But this one's great. Having said that, I will leave you with my usual admonishment: to draw your blades only in just purpose, and sheathe them only with honor. And to remember that without knives, life would be dull and pointless. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. It really helps. And I want to thank you for all the new subscribers. I think I got 5 new subscribers in the last week. I'm growing little bit by little bit. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I leave you by bidding you a good day, good night, whatever the case may be, where you are.